Did you know that you can make a cute little mini quilt using your 4-inch hoop on your embroidery machine? It may look intimidating, but I promise you it's very easy. Once you have completed the stitching on your quilted blocks, I am going to show you how to take those blocks and assemble them and turn it into a cute little wall hanging. Once all your embroidery stitching is complete and you have clipped away all of your jump stitches, you're going to be left with what looks like this: your backing fabric, your batting, and your stabilizer. First thing you're going to do is remove all of the stabilizer, because it's just going to add bulk to your quilt if you stitch through it. I take my embroidery scissors for this so that I don't cut away anything that I don't want to. And if you do snip through some of the basting stitches, which are those long stitches along the edges, if you stitch through any of those, no big deal, because you're going to end up needing to trim them later anyways. Okay, now my next step is to cut 1/2 inch away from each edge. So I'm taking my ruler and I'm lining it up so that the 1/2 inch mark is right on those basting stitches. See if you can see a little closer. There you go. Yeah, there's my basting stitches and there's my 1/2 inch cut. So you're going to repeat this process with all 9 of your quilt blocks. Once all your blocks are trimmed down, nice and neat and the same size, you can just lay them out on a table and see how you like them displayed. I kind of like this because it separates my greens and my reds, my blues, with the white in the center. Once you've decided how you want them arranged, you're going to take the first 2 and you're going to stitch them together 1/2 inch away from the edge. So you're going to do this on a regular sewing machine. So, okay, so you're going to stitch right along there on your sewing machine. Now that I have my first 2 blocks stitched together, I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to take this one and stitch it right along there. Okay, my top row is complete, all stitched together. Now what I'm going to do is go to my iron and then open up these seams, iron them flat, and then I will begin on my next row repeating the steps that I just did for this one. All my rows are now stitched together, and the back side, the seams are ironed nice and flat. So now I'm going to continue until they're all stitched together. Okay, now my top 2 rows are stitched together, but there's something that I want to show you before going on to the next step. I don't know why it happens, but it always does. The underside always does this. So all I do is remove a couple of stitches, and then I go back to the machine, but this time this is the side that's on top. The underside always does that. See, there it is again. So I just consider this goes along with the actual assembly of the quilts. And then once you do that, you can iron them flat and everything will lay nice. I also want to mention that when you're going in to make that little repair on this side, you don't have to redo the whole entire thing. You're only going to cover about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches. That's all you really need, because it will stay in place once you do that. Okay, see how nice it lays now that I've done that little repair? And I'm not kidding, it happens every single time. If you know a way around this, you can share that little secret with me. But this is just what I always do. Now I'm going to go back to the iron and I'm going to iron this seam open, and then I'm going to attach my final row, which is the bottom. Now my top portion of the quilt is complete. You can see how nice everything lays flat on the back side. There's just one step left for this part, and that is to go along and remove. You'll see all these basting stitches. You're going to go and you're going to remove all those stitches. Now that all my basting stitches, the ones that are exposed on the top, have been removed. Now what I'm going to do is just square up my quilt top. Basically all you're going to do is line up your ruler and just cut it so that all these are even. You're probably only going to cut about 1/8 of an inch off. You just want it to be nice and perfectly straight. So you're just going to take your ruler, and you're going to line it up just like this, and then cut just. You're going to continue to cut until all sides are nice and even. As you can see, I really didn't take off very much. Okay, now that that is done, I'm going to put this to the side for just a short time, and I'm going to choose the fabric for my backing and the fabric for my binding. For the backing, I chose this cute little gingerbread fabric. It's cut to about 14 by 14 inches. So I'm going to flip it over so that the wrong side is facing up. Then I'm going to place this right on top like this, and then press it all down nicely, make sure it fits, see where it's where I want it. Then I'm going to take my basting spray, and I gotta say, years ago I used to actually baste with a needle and thread. Since I discovered this, never again. It's like magic. It's going to hold all these pieces together nicely. And this particular brand does not gum up my needles. I have had some that I have used that has gummed up my needles. This one does not. So, see how it's nice on both sides, nice and flat. Now what I'm going to do is go to my machine, and I'm going to use a decorative stitching, or a zigzag, or a straight stitch, whatever you want to do. And I'm just going to go along each one of these. You could even stitch in the ditch if you want. I like to use the decorative stitching though, because I think it really makes it a lot cuter in the end. So I'm going to go take it to my machine now that all the pieces are together, and I'm going to make those stitches, and then I will be right back. Is complete. So now all I'm going to do is cut right along this edge here. You could do that with scissors, or you can do it with your cutting mat, whatever works best for you. I like my cutting mat. I just think it's nice and quick. Now all my excess is cut away, so the front is even with the back. So we're going to set this aside for a minute, and we are going to now work on our little quilt sleeve that's going to go along the back here, and that's going to be made out of the same fabric that we use for our binding. Okay, for your binding and the sleeve that'll be along the upper edge on the back of your quilt, you're going to need two pieces, 45 by 3 inches. Now that I have these two pieces, I'm going to show you how to piece them together so that you will have your binding in one strip. So what you're going to do is lay one piece right side up, and you're going to take the other piece and you're going to place it with the wrong side up right there, just like that. Okay? So you're making an L. Okay, So my line is drawn. Now you're going to stitch right on this line. Take a couple of pins to hold it in place. And then go back to your machine and stitch that. Okay, you're going to cut on this side of your line, and you're going to toss this. So just trim it like this. Okay, and then trim these little bits here. Now I'm going to take it to the ironing board, and I'm going to open this seam up and iron it flat. Okay, I will be right back. Now I'm going to take 11 inches off of one of these pieces, and that's going to be for my rod pocket that goes on the back of the quilt. I was calling it a sleeve, but the real name is actually a rod pocket. So I'm going to take that to the ironing board, and I'm going to iron each end under like a 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to go back to the machine and I'm going to stitch it in place. Okay, now you can see that I think you can see, I've got a line of stitching on each end here. So now I'm just going to fold it in half lengthwise, and then I'm going to go back to the ironing board and press it. Now I'm going to take my quilted piece and I'm going to flip it over. This is my upper edge. So now I'm going to take this piece right here, and I am going to pin it in place. Make sure it's spaced evenly from left to right. And now I'm going to go back to the machine and I'm going to baste this right there about within 1/4 inch from the raw edge. Now we have this attached to the upper edge on the back of the quilt. Mine is off center just a smidge. That's really no big deal as long as you don't get any of this caught up in your binding when you stitch it on, and there's plenty of room there. So I'm just going to whip stitch this in place. Whip stitching is complete. Now I'm going to cut off the excess thread, and I'm going to set this piece aside for just a few minutes. Now I'm going to take this piece that I have joined the two strips together, and I'm going to take the end that's the shortest. If you fold it like that where your seam is, and then you can see that one end is shorter than the other. Okay, so that is the end, the short one, that I'm going to turn under about a 1/4 inch, and I'm going to go press that. Now that the short end is turned under 1/4 inch, I'm going to fold the entire thing in half lengthwise, and I'm going to iron it all the way down the entire length of the binding. So I brought you to the sewing machine so that you can see how I apply my binding. I start at the bottom, so I lay this like this, and then I find the edge of the binding that was folded, which was this edge. So what I'm going to do is place this like this, then I'm going to put this edge right along the raw edge of the quilt, the raw edge of the binding, and then I'm going to stitch about, I like to do this about 3/8 of an inch away from the edge of the quilt. So we're going to start here, and we're going to go all the way along this edge. Alright, so this is what we have now. Our stitching ends right there. So we're going to take our binding piece. Raw edges are still always going to be along the raw edges of the quilt. So I'm bringing that up at a nice little angle, and then I'm going to bring it back down. Okay, so it's going to look like this and this. Now I'm going to begin stitching about 3/8 of an inch from this edge. Again, I'm going to stop about 3/8 of an inch from this edge. Really doesn't have to be exact. And then I'm going to pull this up again so that this little crease is even with that corner. Then I'm going to bring, see how so that little crease is even with that corner. And I'm going to bring it back down and stitch this edge the same way I did the last one. There we go. Okay, I'm going to do that along the remaining side again, like this. All of my projects have step-by-step instructions with them as well, so you can see maybe a little easier on the drawings. I'm not sure, whatever you find easiest. Well, I'm glad I had a backup battery because my battery has decided I have done enough sewing, so it died. So we are back in business now. So we're going to put on our last edge, which is the bottom, and we're going to stitch that corner just like we did all the other corners. Now this time what I'm going to do is, see how it's overlapping here? I'm going to cut this just like that so it no longer is a hanging. Okay, now that it's cut, I'm just going to place it down like this, and I'm just going to continue stitching. When you get to this part, you want to make sure that your stitching line ends right at where that line begins. Okay? All my machine stitching is done. So this is what it's going to look like at the front. Okay, all your little corners are nice and mitered. And what I'm going to do now is cut the excess threads away, and then I'm just going to flip all this binding back like this, and then I'm just going to whip stitch it to the back. And then that is it. Your project is complete. The binding is now stitched to the back of the quilt. Your corners are nice and mitered. Now your little quilt is just ready for hanging. And you did all this on an embroidery machine with a 4-inch hoop. If you are new to In the Hoop by Cher, be sure to sign up for our freebie packed newsletter. You're going to have a free embroidery design almost every single weekend. And who doesn't like free embroidery designs? Also, be sure to subscribe, like, share, or comment. And if you want to make your own mini quilt, you'll find the link below. Thanks for watching.